Hi everyone, today we're going to be stitching our ugly sweater Christmas ornament. Now, I don't really think it's that ugly. I actually think it's pretty adorable, but we're just going to go with that name. So the first elements that we're going to be work on are the candy canes and the stump of the tree. Then we're going to move on to the tails of the star, and then all the weaving elements for the collar and the waist and sleeves. Then we can move on to any of the other details. Get started on the candy cane. We're gonna double up our thread, so it's 6 strands doubled up to equal 12. Make a chunky knot at the end, and we're just gonna back stitch the entire shape of the candy cane using the 12 strands. Do not add a lot of tension. This needs to be fairly loose because we will be going through with another needle to whip it. When you come to the end of your candy cane and back stitch, we're just going to go ahead and secure our thread by going below a few of the previous stitches through the back. Doesn't need to be anything too drastic. We don't want to make too many bulky knots in the back. Now to start our whipping stitch, we're going to be using 6 strands. You're going to start at the same place where you started your back stitch. Now with the whipping, you need to make sure that you stay in the same pattern. For instance, here I'm going to be going towards the inside of the candy cane below. Then we're going to cross over and go below again. So we're going to go, I've come up, I'm going below my back stitch. I've crossed my thread over to the right. I'm going to go ahead and go below my next back stitch. And as you can see, it starts wrapping the back stitch. So I just keep going in the same pattern. Once you get to the end, you're going to go back down that exit hole. And there you go. You've completed your candy cane. It's going to look a little loose here in this section because that hole where you make the bowl is a little bit on the larger side. But once we add the additional details, it's going to line up. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the stump of the tree using the same technique. Secure your thread before moving on. We're using 12 strands of the white. We're going to start at the very bottom and work our way up to this hole here using back stitch. Again, make sure that you keep your tension low or light because we're going to be going below those back stitches. So once you've stitched your line and back stitch, go ahead and secure your thread. We're going to be taking our green thread with only 6 strands. I'm going to start at the bottom. All right. So once I'm done, I go ahead and end the stitch by going down the very top and securing my thread. So we are moving on to stitch the tails of the star. Now these are going to be chain stitched, but the first stitches that we need to work on are little straight stitches that we anchor our first chain stitch to, and there's a total of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Here in the unstitched kit, you could see these little lines, and go ahead and work those. For these, I do recommend that there's some tension to the thread because we don't want the chain stitches to be loose. So I started from the bottom, worked my way up doing these straight stitches. Now I'm gonna go ahead and move back down and come up this hole here to create my first chain stitch. Now I didn't start my chain stitches at the top, so this way, this is kind of creating tension throughout the thread. If I would have started up here, I think this would have been a little bit loose. So came back down. I'm gonna go through that first straight stitch, and we're gonna go ahead and go back down this top hole, creating our first chain stitch. Now to continue, I'm going up the next chain stitch hole. I'm gonna go below that previous chain stitch. There you go. All right, so when you're done with your first line of chain stitches, go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, when you're done with your last chain stitch there, just go ahead, secure your thread. Now as you stitch your piece, do try to keep these end threads as short as possible because we're going to be putting felt over this towards the end, and just having less bulk is going to be really helpful. All right, so now to start some of the weaving for the sweater, we're going to start with the collar. And for all of the weaving, including the waistband, the sleeves, the collar, we always need to make sure that we first stitch all the vertical lines. And all of them are done in white using 12 strands. So it's 6 strands folded over to equal 12. And we're going to start there at the very bottom for the sweater. And we're just going to go ahead and stitch all the vertical lines first. And using light tension here because we will be passing below the stitches pretty frequently, so we don't want to make it too difficult. We want to keep it a little on the lighter side. As you go, make sure you pass your needle through a few times. When I come to the end there, what you could do, you could go ahead and just tie off your ends, but very loosely. You don't need to make this tight at all. We're going to go ahead and take 12 strands again of the opposite color. We're starting at the bottom and we're going to weave our way all the way across, going down one stitch above the next. So here I consider that going above. I'm going to go ahead and go below and maneuver your needle to be able to get through. Now once you've completed a line, go ahead and take the back of your needle and just push it down to kind of keep along the design of the curve. So for here, we ended that going below that stitch. So for this one, we're going to go above it, go below the next one. And finish your line by going down the hole, and again push down everything as you go through. Now that we're done with the weaving, I'm going to go ahead and back stitch the section here and up here, but I'm going to avoid these holes there because we still have one more stitch and that's going to be a lot of tension. So we're just going to start the back stitch from here to there for the bottom, and same thing for the top, from there to there. So using 6 strands, go ahead and locate this hole here, and this is where I'm going to start the back stitches. And if you feel that it's difficult to pass the needle, you could go ahead and use some pliers to help you pull and push through. But I find that using this type of needle, the number 5 embroidery, it's not a blunt end, so it really helps you kind of get through some of the more difficult holes. Okay, so I'm done with the back stitch for the bottom. I'm going to do the same thing for the top, avoiding that very top hole. Just going to go ahead and start at the one next to it. So I've gone ahead and weaved the waistband and one of the cuffs, and I want to show some of the details of finishing it off with the back stitch for these 2 sections, because it is a little bit different for each, the collar, the waistband, and the cuffs. So for the bottom, the cuffs and the waistbands, we're going to be using 6 strands of the white, and for the waistband, we're going to just go ahead and do 2 straight stitches at each end. And if there's a knot, be careful, try to avoid going through it. And then we're going to go ahead and back stitch the top. We create another straight stitch, and then we back stitch the top. So now that I've completed back stitching the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and do a single straight stitch here for this side, and then continue the back stitch at the top. Okay, so we're done with the waistband. Now the cuffs only have 2 straight stitches on each side, no back stitches at the top or bottom. That's because there's going to be way too much tension for the rest of the details. So we're just going to go, as you can see, it's already a little bit tough there. So that's one. Then we just go to the next one and do the straight stitch. And you might need your pliers for this section here. All right, so those are all the details for all the weaving techniques. All right, so for the little bow, we're going to use 6 strands, and I've made a chunky knot at the end, but I'm not going to go ahead and pierce through the hole where the bows start. What I'm going to do, I'm going to anchor my thread and tie it down to some of these candy cane stitches, because I want to avoid having a lot of knots in that hole that I'm gonna have to go through about 4 times to achieve the little bow. All right, so now that my thread is secure, I am going to go ahead and locate that hole and try to go to the side of the candy cane, avoid going right through the thread. So we're gonna go ahead and pull through. We're gonna go back down that same hole. Careful not to snag any of the other thread. And we're gonna leave a loop behind. Now we're gonna come up that hole there, and we're gonna go through the loop. So we've come through the hole, and I am going to go through my loop, and I'm going to gently tug on the thread until I get the size and shape I like. And then I'm going to go back down that top hole to tack the loop down. Don't pull too hard, otherwise you're going to pull right through it. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing again, but on the opposite side of the candy cane thread. So just gently locate your hole and move your thread over. We don't want to go through that thread, otherwise it's going to ruin the stitching. So we're doing the same thing. We're coming up that hole. We're going to go back down. There's a little bit of tension, so you might need your pliers again. So leaving a loop behind, I'm going to come up through that hole, through the loop, and I'm going to just gently tug and then tack the loop down. All right, so now that we have our 2 little loops for the bow, I'm gonna actually secure my thread. I'm gonna go ahead and, secure my thread. Not super tight. I don't want to add more tension to the front loops. So now, still working with your 6 strands, we're going to go through the front end of the bow of the candy cane. Again, go through the side, and we're going to push through. We're going to leave some thread behind. You are going to secure your thread again, not by a lot, you just need a little bit. Doesn't need a lot of tension. So secure your thread, trim, and we're going to go back through the front of the side of the other chain stitch. You will definitely need your pliers for this one. Good thing is we're done. After this, you won't have to go through it again. So again, leave a tail behind, secure your thread, and now with the little tails, you could go ahead and cut them at an angle at the length that you like. And you can kind of separate your thread a little bit, trim them a little bit more to match them up, and there you go. That's the bow for the candy cane. For the outside of the star, we're using 6 strands, and for the center is 1 strand folded over to equal 2. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and stitch the star using straight stitches. Okay, so we've completed the outside. Again, we're going to move on to the inside, which is only 1 strand folded over. I'm going to secure this, then I'm going to separate my thread. So using 6 strands with a knot at the end, all you have to do is go through one of the holes. You're going to wrap your thread around your needle 2 times, 1, 2, and you're going to go back down that hole you came through. Now because this is my starting stitch, I'm with the back of my finger on the back side, I'm moving that knot to the side. I don't want to go through the knot. And I am pulling and I am adding tension on this side and the front side by that loop that's creating, by sticking my finger in there and just pulling on it as I pull the back thread to create a little knot. Now for the moving forward, since you don't have to deal with that knot, it actually gets a little bit simpler. So we're wrapping our needle twice, going back down that hole. I'm adding tension, and also it kind of helps if your thread isn't as long as mine. So there you go. Gonna do a few more. For the tree, it's all detached chain stitches. We're going to be using 6 strands folded over to equal 12. We're going to go ahead and start in the center from the bottom, work our way up. This is just easier for me, but you could really start in any location you like. So I went up through that hole. I'm going to go back down that exact same hole, leaving a loop behind. And coming up, tugging on the thread to create the shape I like, and tacking that petal down. Now when you have 2 together, we're going to be doing the same. Just make sure you move your knot to the side. We're going back down, push some of the thread over so it doesn't get snagged. We're leaving a loop behind. Going through the hole and the loop. Tugging on it till we get the shape we like, and tacking your petal down. For the outline of the sweater and for the details there for the sleeve, it's 6 strands. And I think it's easier if you complete this section first. All of that is just done with straight stitches, and you could really begin wherever you like. Just go ahead and follow the grid line. All right, once you're done with the detail of the sleeve, we're gonna go ahead and start the stem stitch, which for the shoulder area to the arm, we need to start at the very top. So for this side it'd be here, and for the opposite side it'd be there. So this is using only 6 strands, and we're gonna go ahead and connect even holes with even and odd holes with odd holes. So we've started there. That's hole 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So we're at hole 1. We're gonna go ahead and go back down hole number 3. We're coming back up hole number 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're gonna go back down hole number 2. And you could follow the guide on the stitching direction on your manual, but you're essentially going below the stitch to achieve the smoothest curve. We are coming up hole number 1, 2, 3, 4, hole number 5, and going back down hole number 3. We're going to repeat in this pattern until we get to the very end of the sleeve. and where you're going below the stitch, you're pushing the thread above and going through the hole. When you get to the very bottom hole there for the stitch, for the stem stitch, you will definitely need your pliers to pull through. And then I'm gonna have to rethread this. All right. So now you just have to complete the rest of the outline of the sweater using stem stitch, and we're going to move on to adding the finishing details. To attach the beads, we're going to be using a single strand doubled up. You could really use any color you like. What we're going to do, we're going to come up through the base of each detached chain stitch, thread a bead and go back down that same hole. And there you go. You could leave it on the looser end, or you could pull on it taut. If some beads, the eye is a little bit too tight, just swap it for another one. To attach the bells, you could use any color thread, but it's one strand folded over. Now what you're going to do is you're going to anchor your thread first to the back. You are going to go through the front, and now the only place the only holes that will take the beads are these three here. All right, so 1, 2, 3. So you're going to go up. You're going to string a bell. As I'm working on this tutorial, I am realizing that the number 5 needle that I supplied with the kit doesn't go through many of the bells. I'm really sorry about that. I stitched up 3 of these kits using the same needle and I had no problems, but a lot of these are extra tight. If you are encountering this problem, please switch over to a thinner needle, or even a beading needle would work. I'm really sorry about that. I didn't realize I had to quality control every single one of these little bells, but that is the case. So big apologies for that. So I have gone ahead and switched over to my number 24 tapestry needle that is a little bit slimmer, and this seems to pass through more, or maybe I'm wrong. I'm having a lot of the same issue here. Well, it is working a little bit better than the number 5. So let's see how I could fix this. Let me try one more. Yeah, I mean, it's a shame for me that I didn't quality control every single one. I'm really sorry about that. So some of these are passing through really easily and quite a few are not budging. So shoot, really sorry about that, you guys. So you're going to go ahead and come up. We're going to try to string a bell. This one worked. Now what you're going to do, after your bell is strung, we are not going down the hole. What we're going to do is we're going to secure our thread again, leaving a loop for the bell to kind of have some jingle space. So make sure that you secure your thread again. Making a knot. And now we could go ahead and go back up the next hole and string the next bell. And before going back up, we're just going to go ahead and loop, secure our thread. Make sure you don't get any of these other guys. We're going to trim those at the end. Kind of make sure that they're about the same hanging length. Let me move, it's kind of awkward situation here. Alright, so they're about the same length. And I am going to go ahead and secure my thread.